20 years. 20 years of excavation at the Ness of Brodgar, Orkney, and the influence of the Orcadians on Neolithic archaeology in the British Isles. The site of Ness at Brodgar is roughly 2.5 hectares and is center of a UNESCO World Heritage Site on a narrow spit of land that acts as a natural causeway between the Neolithic standing stone circles of the Ring of Brodgar and the stones of Ness. Predating the more famous Stonehenge 550 miles to the south, phenomenal preservation of Ness of Brodgar is allowing archaeologists to investigate social developments of this multi-phased complex of monumental structures and how those developments influence Neolithic society throughout the British Isles. This presentation placed Ness of Brodgar in its regional archaeological context. The talk will look at the site, the structures uncovered to date, discuss current research efforts to identify activity areas within the structures, and provide updates on findings on ongoing post-excavation analyses. Professor Pike's work in Scotland began in 2011 when he was invited to establish Willam's Archaeological Field School at the Neolithic site. The excavation portion of the project ended last summer. In addition to directing field school, Professor Pike has undertook an extensive geochemical sediment study of the clay floor samples to systematically collect and understand the monumental structures, the data from which provide one line of evidence to help interpret how space in these structures was used. Tonight's talk will focus on the unique features at Ness of Brodgar and how the excavation has reshaped our understanding. So please join me in welcoming Scott Pike.
Thank you.
You got two of them.
Yeah.
It's for your presentation.
Oh, thanks, man.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. Thank you, Julia. Thank you, Penn, for the introduction. It's a pleasure, really, to be here. I've been working with the Oregon Archaeological Society as part of their boot camp training, and then also the projects that they've been doing in the Salem area and this last summer on the Willamette campus. So it's always a pleasure to talk to the society and to meet some new people. And tonight it's going to be a pleasure to talk about a project that's near and dear to my heart. It brings tears to my eyes because we had to end the excavation last summer. But anyway, I'm jumping ahead of myself and I will get started. So Penn did a really good introduction of the site and sort of was half my talk right there. But I think I'll just repeat it and I'll show you some eye candy to discuss this wonderful, wonderful site. So I'm going to begin by not talking about the site. I'm going to begin by talking about Stonehenge. When we think of the Neolithic in the British Isles, most people's our thoughts might go to Stonehenge. It's certainly better known. It's a very important site, receives millions of visitors, and I show you these pictures and you go, oh, it's Stonehenge. And there's been a great bit of research done on Stonehenge and its surrounding areas. But Stonehenge is not the only Neolithic site in the UK. And interestingly, it postdates this site up in Orkney. And what I wish to do tonight is to show you this connection between Stonehenge and Orkney. I'm going to talk about our site, the Neolithic site of the Ness of Brodgar in Orkney, and show you, and at the end, have this conversation about how the developments up in Orkney influenced this site down in England. So we are talking about the Neolithic, so let's put that into a time frame and what's going on. So in the Neolithic, so roughly 4000 BCE to about 2000 BCE, where you put the border on these calendar years is is always a little difficult. It wasn't an abrupt transition, but a transition from a time in the Mesolithic when people were living in small bands, mostly hunter-gatherers, moving around the landscape, following the seasons, following the deer, following the food. But they were not permanent. They did not have permanent residence. They were moving around. In the Neolithic, we have metal. Okay, so this is that period between. Now, what's going on in the Neolithic is humans developed farming. They developed agriculture. They developed how to cultivate food. And with that development in skill, they became settlers. They became permanent present. They began to build permanent homes in the landscape. They had to tend their fields, and they stayed put. And they started to domesticate animals at the same time. So we see this is a major transition for humans, for our culture, because no longer were we living in these small bands. We now were stationary, and we built homes. And we also built a surplus of food. So our populations began to grow. And also, people began to specialize. Maybe you had your ceramic maker. Maybe your religion became a little more complex and you actually started having priests or something equivalent, some leaders within a political structure, perhaps. So society becomes stratified at the same time. And we do have some evidence of this at the Ness. So this is a really interesting period in human development. We become sedentary. We start having more complex relationships, more complex society, and we start building things, homes, structures. So let's place us. So here we are in Orkney, and way up here, and Stonehenge, 550 miles south in the southern part of the British Isles. And I'm going to argue that there was a highway of information from Orkney to Stonehenge. Now, this highway I've shown you is the British interstate system, essentially, so that's not really there. But we have some sort of connection between the space up in Orkney and down below in England. How people moved, probably by land, but it is quite possible they went by sea. And what I'm going to show you through the material evidence is that the culture and material culture that developed in Orkney heavily influenced and moved rapidly to the south. Within about 100, 150 years, we see a transition of cultures from what was developed in Orkney down to Stonehenge. So it appears that what was happening in Orkney, particularly at the Ness of Brodgar, was something important, something influential that spread south, rapidly spread south. Now, the biggest piece of evidence we have to support that is a ceramic style called grooved ware. This is just a pot of grooved ware from a site in England, in Dorset, Wyke Downs. And this ceramic style first appears in Orkney, near the Ness of Brodgar. So again, we're seeing this influence of the ceramic type come from the above, from the north, moving rapidly to the south. So let's look at Orkney, its location, and why this site was just incredibly phenomenal. Okay, so here's a map of Orkney, and you can see it's an archipelago just to the north tip of mainland Scotland in this area in red, and just here's a topographic view. Now, the largest island of Orkney is called Mainland. So it's mainland Orkney, and I really still struggle to this day to understand what Orcadians call the rest of Scotland, because I would call that the mainland. But anyway, this is mainland right here. And we are going to focus on the west mainland in this area shown by the red square. In the late 1990s, the local archaeological community and the council at Orkney the Island Council at Orkney, wanted to have Orkney be identified as a World Heritage Site. Now, Orkney's archaeology is rich. You put a shovel in the ground, you're going to find something. It could be Neolithic, Iron Age, Viking period. The Vikings had a huge presence there, or later. But the archaeology there is really rich. But the West Mainland area that's in this section is particularly rich in Neolithic archaeology. So everything in this funky font, I don't know why they used it, but in this funky font is Neolithic. It's a Neolithic feature. Some of the more famous ones, the Mound of Maes Howe. It's a chamber tomb, and I'll show you some pictures in a moment. The stones of Ness, a standing stone circle. There's some standing stones surviving here at the causeway. There's what was thought to be a cairn here, another burial feature. I'll show you later that it's not. A very large 60-stone standing circle here called the Ring of Brodgar. I'll show you some pictures. This funky wall right here that today is actually still used as a division of parishes by the church. But this is a Neolithic wall that is situated in a farmer's field. And then we have some more features up here, burial chamber tombs, mostly unexcavated at this point. What you do not see is anything on the Ness of Brodgar. There is no bullet, there is no funky script on the Ness of Brodgar, because this map was made in the late 1990s. The Ness of Brodgar as a site wasn't discovered until 2003. So such a large important site was late in its discovery. Now there were hints of the site's location. In 1925, an antiquarian by the name of George Marwick was tracing around on the surface of where the Ness is today and found this stone. And if you look carefully, you can see all this wonderfully carved designs on it. These sort of diamond shaped decorations, and then some swirls here. He recognized this and thought it might be a capstone to a Bronze Age schist tomb. He collected it, ended up at the Scottish National Museum, and today it's still there, known as the Brodgar Stone. So if you end up in Edinburgh, go to the National Museum and you will find this stone there. So this was 1925. Oops. Wrong button. Way too many controls up here. There we go. And in his notes, in his letters, okay. So in his notes and letters, Marwick wrote, "The field containing these graves appears to contain much of archaeological interest." So he recognized that there was something there, but no projects were undertaken. No additional research was done. So here we are, aerial view. This is taken from an airplane, and soon after the site's, prior to the site's discovery. And you can see all these very important sites, Maes Howe, Ness, Ring of Brodgar, some standing stones, Skarabrae, which was an important Neolithic village. I'll show you some images in a moment, but not the Ness of Brodgar. It hadn't been discovered yet. I know, it's fascinating. It makes cameras fall. Let's see here. I don't think I even hit the podium. It was just shocking that anyway. So let me show you some of this Neolithic material that was known, that is known, and you can still visit today. These are images of Maes Howe. It is a large chambered tomb, a cairn, dates to about 3000 BCE. The picture on the top is interesting because it's obviously circular, and this was taken by a Smithsonian photographer who just sort of flattened it out. So, so imagine the top image in the sort of in the round, And what's spectacular here is they're not using any mortar. These are just stones stacked on top of each other. And these large orthostat stones, they look like standing stones, don't they? I mean, you can see them here and here and here. These are in the corners. They provide no structural support for the roof. They're there for some other purpose, but not for the physical structure. They're not supporting the weight of the roof above, which is interesting. Also, the tilted shape of them, and I'll show you some standing stone circles in a moment, and the tilted angle of these stones suggest that they are standing stones. And some early archaeology that was done in the floor of the chamber tomb suggests that there may have actually been a standing stone circle here, and that the tomb was built on top of it, and that perhaps they reused the stones in its architecture. It would make sense that there was a standing stone circle here. There is a hinge that goes around it, and a hinge is a circular pit that was dug up. And so there was this hinge that went around it, so it would make sense. Maybe there was a standing stone circle inside. You can visit this, but you have to make reservations months ahead. So if you find yourself going to Orkney, get online quickly. They sell out. I did it again. This is the site of Skara Brae. This is the Neolithic village. It's now on the coast, but during its occupation, it was about a mile inland. The coast has eroded that much since the Neolithic. This is a site that was discovered in 1850. The laird of the island, maybe the lord, but they call him a laird. He owned most of the island. His house was and still is just next to the site. And this was an old sand dune, but they had a massive storm in 1850, and it blew off the sand on the sandstorm and revealed this site called Skara Brae, or Skara Brae in one word. What you see in the site are a series of domestic spaces. They're connected by what at first was thought to be subterranean passageways. Now we do not believe that, but they were passageways that maybe went up to breast height that connected the buildings, and you could walk around from home to home. The site has not been fully excavated. Some of the site has fallen into the sea and has lost forever. Other parts of the site are inland. I want to make a note of some of the common architectural features that we see in each of these domestic spaces. So the way this would work is we're going to look at this bottom image here. You would come in and basically crawl in, duck in, and enter the space. And directly in front of you, in the square in the middle, was the hearth, the fireplace. And then opposite the hearth is a feature that was called a dresser. Now, this is a Victorian term, probably not a dresser, and probably not the way we perceive a dresser, but it was a double-shelved furniture. What was stored there, we don't know. Icons or clothing, Sunday's best, I don't know what was there, but something, but we have these dressers opposite the entryway. Then on the sides, we have what are being interpreted as beds. And so they would have had these two alcoves essentially built out, and there's evidence that they put straw and other grasses in them, perhaps as a bedding material, and then they would have slept here. Also, what we see in some of the homes, but not all of them, are these square-lined pits here and here. And inside those, there was clay. So these were probably watertight. So, and in some of them, we find cracked rock. So the thinking is what the inhabitants did was they brought fresh water in, poured it into these basins, heated the rocks in the fireplace, then moved the rocks to the water and heated the water. And then the cracking is just the shock of the rocks. With that temperature change, the rocks shattered. Interestingly, in Skara Brae, there's two phases of building. The one phase has these uh, beds on the outside. The earlier phase actually has these beds tucked into the walls, and those structures were a little bit smaller. Now, this site had fallen partly into the sea, and they did a reconstruction. And right about here, you can see the line of the wall. So all of this has actually been reconstructed, and the builders actually put a window in. You can see the window right there. There was no window there, probably. There's no evidence they had windows, but it looks nice. These were well-drained systems, and in some of the structures, and they actually had little alcoves walled off that looked like they were used as latrines because they had a gutter system that spilled out that would have drained it. So they actually had a sense of plumbing as well. So quite amazing engineering. So I'm going to come back and we're going to look at this type of architecture again in just a moment. Okay, Ring of Brodgar, very large standing stone circle. At its heyday, it looks like it had 60 standing stones. 30 of them survive today. You can see an image, a drone image of the site as it stands now. Again, it's a hinged site, so we see this pit dug around. Technically, if you say a hinged site, you have the circular ditch, and then the piles from that ditch would have been placed on the inside. So you would have had a pile of dirt around that pit. We don't see that here. We still call it a hinge, I guess. Technically, it's not. Neither is Stonehenge, for a matter of fact. But Stonehenge has the pit, just doesn't have that pile of dirt around it. But that's splitting hairs. All right. This stone's interesting. See how it's split? It split because lightning hit it in a lightning storm, and I think it was 1982, so relatively recently. Here's an image of standing stones of Ness. Would have been 12 standing stones. These are taller standing stones, much taller than what we see at the Ring of Brodgar. Some of them have been replaced, but the stones were there, and the excavators saw the pits that the stones would have slid into. What's real surprising about that is where the slots where the stones slide into are only about 8 inches deep. They're not very deep at all. So these things have been balanced very well for a very long period of time, and some have fallen over, but others haven't. These sheep are today's natural lawnmowers, and the Historic Scotland contracts with the shepherd there to come in and mow the lawn and fertilize it, if you know what I mean. Okay. The stones of Ness are thought to be one of the oldest, if not the oldest, standing stone circles in the British Isles as well. And then throughout this landscape, we have associated standing stones, the watchstone on the left, the barnhouse stone on the right. Across the road right here, there was a very famous stone called the Odin stone that has a lot of folklore associated with it, but it was destroyed by a farmer in the 19th century because he got so annoyed with people coming over there and doing traditional things like passing the baby through the hole to protect it, or people getting engaged, holding hands through the hole in this stone, and he got annoyed with it, so he took a sledgehammer to it and destroyed it one night. I'm going to say probably one drunken night, but one night. The locals were so furious with him, a mob went after him, and he was kicked off the island. So yeah, don't mess with the standing stones. Now, these sites have been known to archaeologists, antiquarians, and the local community for a long time. Here we have a picture from 1862, a painting showing the site. Here's Maze Howe in the front. You can see the Ring of Brodgar up here on the hill slope. Here's a couple stones and the standing stones of Ness. So this landscape was known. This is the Ness of Brodgar. There's no archaeology known there. Again, it wasn't a known site. Right. As part of the efforts to identify this area as a World Heritage Site, the local college, it was Orkney College at the time, and now it's known as Orkney College, University of the Highlands and Islands, Scotland's newest university, they did a geophysical survey of the area that was being proposed for a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And the geophysical surveys are essentially using various techniques. Mostly they used magnetometry to look at features beneath the ground prior to excavation. It's a preferred technique in a sense because excavation's expensive, excavation's slow, and excavation's destructive. A geophysical survey is more rapid and much more cost efficient, and also gives you a pretty good idea of things you might expect to find beneath the surface if you were to excavate. So here you can see these long lines right here. These are igneous dikes. So these are geologic features, igneous intrusions that have hardened some. Here is the Ring of Brodgar. But they did lots of projects. You can see the hinge around the stones of Ness. It pops up really, really well. Now in 2003, the landowner of the site that would become the Ness of Brodgar was preparing a garden outside his kitchen window. And there's some stories about his relation. His wife is phenomenal. They're both phenomenal people, and this was meant to be a wedding gift. What a gift! He was working with a plow. He overturned this stone, and he also said, "Oh, this is again probably another one of these capstones for a Bronze Age burial, assist burial." So he did what he was supposed to do, and he contacted the county archaeologist. And the county archaeologist comes out and goes, yeah, you have something here. And she brings a team out to do some investigations. They went, and what they did is they went and looked at the geophysical survey that had been done for the UNESCO World Heritage proposal. And they said, okay, that stone that was overturned came from here. And then what they said, we're going to dig these exploratory trenches. They were about the width of shovels, some were meter by meter. And they went down to try to explore what some of these dark line features are, because they might be signs of architecture or something else. So all these stars are these test pits that were excavated. So here's some of these test trenches from 2004 and 2007. And this one at the top, you can see these stones here like this. This is unnatural. The natural bedrock here, it's not even a bedrock, the natural geologic material are glacial till. So when you see rocks lined up like this in an orderly fashion, you know they're not natural. And so they knew that the archaeologists knew that there was something going on here, and with this exploration. So the test pits got bigger and bigger and bigger, and this is what the site ended up looking like near its end. So this big trench right here is called Trench P, Trench X, and Trench J, which we later reopened again. But this is what the site looked like. And what I want you to identify or notice here is, again, its placement in the landscape. It's on this narrow spit of land. The Ring of Brodgar is up here. We have two lakes right here, the Loch of Hari and the Loch of Ness on the left. And these structures here, whose walls are still pretty phenomenal. Okay, when we do a plan of the primary structures, the large structures that are preserved on the site, this is what the plan looks like. And from the plan, we can tell that this is a multi-phased site. And what that means is we had different periods of construction, different buildings built on top of other buildings. So, for instance, structure 10, which we believe to be the last structure in this pit, the final structure that was built. Over its corner here overlies structure 8. So structure 10 is older than structure 8. And structure 8 overlies structure 7. So structure 8 is older than structure 7. And it looks like structure 1 might cut into structure 7. So 1 is probably older than 7. Okay, so we have done this with structures, but we have 46 of them on site. So we're still in the process of phasing, trying to understand which structure was occupied when how the floor levels of the structures sync up. Other things that's not shown on this, because these are just the main structures that we've been working on, is, for instance, beneath structure 8, we have 2 additional structures, 17 and 18. So 17 is like this and 18 is like this. So we have multiple phases of occupation or activity, I should call it activity, multiple phases of activity at the site through time. So here's a drone view looking down at the site. You can see the structures right here. Right here, in case you're wondering, this is our spoils pile. This is our pile of dirt that we've removed from the excavation. We have a standing stone right here that was in the middle of the site. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go around and talk a little bit about each of these structures because they're unusual. There are no Caparanda anywhere in the Neolithic in the British Isles. These buildings are truly unique. So the buildings in red are these main structures. The buildings in yellow are the ones that predate these main structures that were there before. So we know the site predates about 3100 BCE. We have radiocarbon dates that support this. We're waiting to get back some new ones. I was hoping to have them by this week. Unfortunately, they're not in yet. Just to understand how far back we go. We may even have some examples from the Mesolithic. So we might be right at that transition into agriculture. And it could be that this site even had significance prior to people settling in the area. And that's a real exciting line of research that we hope to take. Okay, so let's look at these main structures. So and some of the features of them. Let's start with structure 1. So here's an aerial view of structure 1, nice and cleaned up. And you can see the outline of the original structure. This building's preservation is phenomenal. The walls are completely straight to this day, especially on, this would be the south side, but on the south side, they're completely plumb to this day. It's quite remarkable. This structure did have some remodeling over time. It does have 2 hearths, but it also had this wall that was added later. What's also interesting about this hearth, you can't see it from this angle, but right here, there's a very large orthostat, stone, slotted into this hearth, which happened at a later time. So the hearth went out of use, and they put a stone there. One of the features that we're seeing in most of the structures from the Ness are these little walls that stick out, creating internal divide in the space. They don't go across, but these little septums stick out. So we're seeing a septum here going across. And then here's sort of an angular view of the site. And again, just look at this preservation of the wall. Just outstanding. And then here's that standing stone. I'm sorry, not standing stone, but the orthostat slotted into an old hearth. And this is the wall that was later added to it. And this is a drain pipe that feeds water to the house next door. All right. Structure 8, oops. Here's a picture of structure 8. One of my favorite structures because it's just weird. It's about 30 meters long, 20 meters long, sorry, which is incredibly long structure. Again, you have these septums going across it, multiple hearths. So here's sort of an outline, multiple hearths. We're now trying to work, were they all operational at the same time, or are we seeing different phases of use at the hearth? They had clay floors and these divides. One of the projects I did was we think that they were storing either peat or kelp as a fuel source in this bay, no, I'm sorry, this bay right here. and feeding it directly into this fire. That's some of the evidence we have. Now, what was also remarkable about 8 is when they first came down on the floor, or came down on it, they saw these stones covering the floor. And they have since been removed to reveal this. But these stones were, we were questioning exactly what they were at first. And we're like, well, are they paving their floors with stones? But the way that they were lined up, it was not a good paving job. There's a lot of bumps and whatnot. But what we realized they were is because we found some post holes in structure 8 as well, is that these are actually roofing tiles. And they were excavated very carefully, piece by piece. Everything was recorded precisely. There's a student now, PhD student, piecing this all back together to render the structure. But essentially, these stones would have been very similar to what we see in modern day crofts and barns in Orkney. So they're using the local sands, the local stones to create these roof tiles. So that was pretty phenomenal. So one, this was a fairly sophisticated architectural deed. They had to have a lot of understanding at 3100 BCE, so early on in this and the major monumental architecture at the site. Two, they had to have wood. The pictures I've shown you, you've seen no trees. So they were getting the wood from somewhere. So there's probably some wood available to them. They do get wood from Canada. It comes on the ocean. So they get driftwood from Canada, but probably not enough to really support a architectural feature like this, but maybe it was, I don't know. So just again, here's a rendering. Our site director, his name is Nick Card. He's also a builder. And so he loved these diagrams and would help explain how they would have used the wood to make these support beams and put the stones on top of them. Also in structure 8, we found, okay, not we, I wasn't there. This was the year before I started. So in 2010, they found the first evidence of a painted interior space in all of Northern Europe. That's a mouthful. But anyway, so you can see the painting here, the ochre color, the red color, the black color, the yellow color. The stone was painted. Now, not all the stones were painted, only select stones. But once this was discovered, the excavators knew that they should be looking for this. Prior to its discovery, they weren't because we didn't have painted interior space from this period. So they started looking. So that's pretty phenomenal. So we're seeing some painted interior space. So that's a development here. Okay. Let's look at structure 10. My text fell off the screen, but structure 10 is in yellow here. When structure 10 was discovered, and you can see its shape like this, Nick Card, again, the excavation director, said, oh, it looks like a cathedral. Well, that attracted the press. Oh, a cathedral from 3000 BCE. Let's go. It's not a cathedral. He regrets saying it, but it does sort of have that appearance. So when they first came down on the building and removed the topsoil, this is its structure. Artist rendering made it look like this stone line roof. Again, note the two standing stones that were at the entrance. One of the standing stones is right here. The other one's still under the bulk, so it hasn't been excavated yet. So this is the way the site appeared when we first came down on it. Note again, here's the entryway. Here's a hearth. And guess what was located right here? A dresser. So they found a dresser here. So we're saying, okay, this is interesting. This is monumental architecture, much bigger than a domestic space, but it's mimicking the architecture of a domestic space, but in something larger. As they continued excavating, they found a dresser here and another dresser here. So this was a 3-dressered structure, monumental in scale, later phase of this building in and of itself. As they continued excavating, they started removing the additions. to try to get to the original, the older phases of the structure. And they saw this blue line. So there was this middle phase with the blue line and then an older phase of yellow lines. So this building, large initially, very large, had different phases and they got smaller and smaller. Now, why would they enclose their space? One of the difficulties that the inhabitants had at the Ness was they were building structures on top of older structures. And those older structures, maybe caved in or they were just too small for their purposes or whatever, they backfilled them in, and over time that soil started setting and creeping. And as the locations of the older buildings crept, the walls on top of them fell down. So structure 10 had some structural problems because its foundations weren't stable. Walls were falling in. So one of the ideas is they were enclosing it more and more to offer stability, maybe for the roof. Okay, so here the dresser to straight ahead, dresser to the left, dresser to the right. Now, another interesting thing that was found at 10, it's indicated in the location of these stars. So in this star right here was found a carved stone ball. That is the technical name. And a carved stone ball is seen in the Neolithic in northern Scotland. These are balls about baseball, softball size, different shapes and sizes. About 400 or so are known, but very, very few have been discovered in a confined architectural context. This is one of the few. And you can see it's this dimpled ball. Looks like this when it's cleaned up. And this was discovered inside the wall in structure 10. It wasn't dropped on the floor, but it was intentionally placed inside a wall and only found through excavation. Now, there are many other carved stone balls, as I said, roughly 400 or so now, but only a handful have been found in context. And the fact that this was in a wall is certainly interesting. This is where the other star was. This large stone was found in a wall on the opposite corner of structure 10. It's a quite large stone, beautiful stone, with carvings on it. It took several people to build it, to lift it. I, that day, decided I had a sore back, and I pulled out my camera and took pictures instead. Oops, wrong way. So when you take a close-up in color of the stone, it's quite remarkable. Again, we're seeing art. We're seeing these carvings, these etchings. And if you look carefully, you can see over here that these etchings are actually over older etchings. So there's some faint carvings over here. So what do these diamonds mean, these lozenge-shaped designs? Well, we don't know, but we have found them on over 300 pieces of stone that were built in the walls on this site. Now, this is an incredibly large stone, but we're finding them in other stones too. And the excavators, as they work, learn that, every piece of stone that we pull out, we have to look at very carefully to make sure we're not missing any of this art. And I'm using the term art loosely here, because again, what is art? And that's a whole another question. But what is the meaning, the purpose of these designs? We don't know. And we see other designs in later Neolithic sites. So it's interesting. Also, what we see here are these cup holes right here. These were intentionally carved out. These little cut marks. So pretty remarkable stone. Okay, so this again started the project, and we had the geophysical surveys. And sorry, I'm having a little issue with the mouse here. Okay, so this right here is structure 10. It showed up beautifully on the geophysical survey done in 1999. This is structure 12 right here. It comes out really nicely. So the geophysics did a really nice job helping us identify locations to excavate. So this large trench is become Trench P. Let's go over here. Okay, this is interesting. So this piece of land is owned by someone else. Eventually they got nice and let us go over there and do some work. You see these features right here, these dark lines that are curving. These have the signature of a chambered tomb. So we were excited to go in there to find a chambered tomb. That was the theory, that was the idea. The other thing we wanted to do is the geophysics suggested here that there was a wall, and these little excavations suggested there was a wall there, a big wall. And right here, there might be a wall. So this suggests that perhaps this was a walled compound. And we'll come back to that in a moment. Okay, but let's look over here at what our chamber tomb, our proposed chamber tomb looks like. So what we did was we dug a very long exploratory trench from up here across those lines down here. And our chamber tomb ended up being an Iron Age pit that was stone lined. Okay, I'm working with people who love the Neolithic, so they're like, the Iron Age. I still think that was pretty awesome because, you know, it's older than America. So, no, really old. So, but it wasn't a Neolithic chambered tomb. But what was discovered and took several years to excavate was structure 27. This remarkable structure, late Neolithic, probably late Neolithic. We don't have any evidence yet to tie it in to when it was built related to the structures that I showed you earlier. We don't know how it fits in. But there's some interesting features to it. One, the architecture is different. The style is different. The walls are a lot thinner and much, 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 much better made. The quality of engineering is just phenomenal. And I'll show you just some photos in a second. What's also really interesting about this structure, it does not appear that there was, well, it didn't appear until 2 days before the end of the excavation that there was a structure beneath it. And then lo and behold, one of my students foiled the fun, and we think there might be an early building right here. Not too sure. But what this building was actually dug through, us as excavators were digging through, was midden. So midden is waste. It's mostly organic waste and clay that people have been putting there. And this midden pile is the largest midden pile that's yet been discovered in the British Isles. It was huge. So, midden is not trash. Midden is valuable. Midden is material that's collected, used as insulation in walls, and it has value. And the fact that there was such a large midden pile here also suggests that this site had some big parties, had some big ritual events where they were eating lots of food and dumping it in this midden pile. We don't find a village nearby, but we have these monumental structures. So they were doing something here to create the midden pile. So we dig through this midden material and find this structure here. And it's unlike any of the other structures. We do see some septa, but these are only represented by single orthostat stones, not walls. The walls are thinner, but when you look at how they were made, you can just see that they were carved, worked perfectly, completely smooth, and the walls were curved. It's really hard to take a picture of a curved wall, but we tried our best. So here you can see a curved wall, and one of our excavators there, sitting on these other large stones that were laid flat. Just phenomenal, phenomenal architecture through and through. The interior wall space, this is some photogrammetry I made of the structure. You can see these large stones. Again, these are the size of standing stones, but they're laid horizontally. We never got dug down to the bottom of them. You can see some over here as well. And these were probably some sort of cladding where they slipped these into the floor, then took other orthostats and laid them against, oh, I don't have the cartoon. I lost the cartoon. Okay, but laid those standing stones, these larger stones, sort of flat against them. So these would have been a brace of support for these orthosat stones feeding on the inside. So that was amazing. What we also found was a single hearth. Samples have been collected. We did find organic material in them, so we're dating those. And then at the end of the 23 season, we found wood. Wood does not preserve well in this environment, and this piece of wood was about that big. This is exciting because we're in the process now of conserving the wood so we can identify the wood, what kind of wood it is, was it a fuel wood or was it a piece of wood that was supporting the roof? So that's exciting. We're still waiting for results. A little bit was taken for organic testing as well. So what was this Neolithic site? What was the Ness of Brodgar? It's monumental in scale. All the structures are large, much larger than any known domestic site. We don't have any evidence of domesticity there. We don't find beds. We're not finding a lot of cooking waste, except for in structure 12. So it appears that structure 12 may have been cooking meals for some sort of festivals or rituals, or the elite people who were allowed into this space. I mentioned that northern wall and that southern wall. They call them the Great Wall and the Lesser Wall. Was this a wall compound? And if it was a walled space, who's that wall for? Who's it keeping in and who is it keeping out? Right? So is this space where we're seeing these structures different? Is it have more value than the space beyond? So what can we learn then about the people who occupied this peninsula? And I use that term occupied, who worked there, who did their activities there. But occupied, I don't mean lived necessarily. That's not what I mean. I mean that they were doing their business there, whatever that was, but it doesn't look like they were living there. And was this site used the same way for the 11, 12, 1300 years it was occupied, or did its use change through time? We're seeing larger and larger monuments. Does that mean there's a change in behavior, a change in values, change in ritual, change in cosmology? How were each of the structures used? Were they all used the same way? Maybe structure 12 was the cookhouse. Maybe the buildings were used for different purposes. How was this space perceived and used in the greater landscape of Orkney? I tried to get you a sense of its location. The Ness of Brodgar sits on this peninsula. We have standing stone circles on either end, and it's really in an amphitheater with those two lakes around and the hills on the opposite side of the lakes. This site was visible for multiple kilometers around. So it's in a very prominent location, very visible location. Is that important? No, I think we would say, yes, it is, but is it? We think it is, but we don't know. Some early paleo-environmental work, earlier done paleo-environmental work, suggests that this landscape wasn't open like we see it today, but on the northwestern side, it may have been marshy, and maybe with some trees. So it wouldn't have been as exposed as we see today. Okay, and then what is it about this site that may have influenced what was going on down south? Going back to the question of Stonehenge. So to what degree are the developments here being influenced further south? So this is some work that was, this is some geophysical surveys that were done in 2013. And I've placed on here just the structures that we talked about. So you can see where they are. We have many more structures that were not unearthed, many more structures that were unexcavated. That's what these purple sites are. So this, we had to stop digging because we had 20 years of material we have to study. It was irresponsible for us to continue working until we published the material. Also, Nick Card, the site director, he wants to retire. So he's giving himself 4 years now, 4 years to work on the material for all the specialists to do their bit. We'll publish the site. And then if some young person we're going to emphasize that young, wants to commit 20, 30 years of their life to this, there are more sites to dig. But what's interesting about this geophysical work is we have this wall here, this lesser wall that was discovered, and it was this trench right here suggests that there was a wall. Here's the lesser wall. Here's what's called the greater wall, or yeah, just the big wall here. So it looks like this site did have division. It was separated from this landscape. This is some work that just came out a couple months ago. After we closed the site, they've done some more geophysics to reveal it. We're really trying to understand the wall because we dug a trench here to try to find it. We didn't see it, but the geophysics still suggests the wall is there. So this is appearing to be a space with this monumental architecture that was enclosed, meaning some people had access to it, others did not. Here's the lesser wall here. Maybe it was open somewhat. And here's structure 27 in all its glory here. And the purple are identified buildings that have not been excavated. Oh, I want to go back and excavate. Okay. And then here's some of the geophysics, specifically on one building just south of Trench J, right here in blue. And you can actually see the outline, and it has that appearance, like many of the other structures. Has septa coming out, central fireplace, and again, thick walls going around. So maybe we will reopen it. Someone will reopen it, but I think it's another generation ahead of us. Here's this is Trench J, and this is the greater wall. You can see how thick it is. It's about 6 meters thick. And what was really cool is they unearthed, the excavator found these stairs. So there are 2 sets of stairs that would have climbed up the wall. Were they defensive walls? There's no evidence of any kind of military activity. Maybe some sort of lookout. Maybe that was just part of how they were constructed. Don't know. And then I think my final point on this is, if you look at the geophysics of the peninsula, so we have the Ness of Brodgar here, and we have our greater wall right here. We don't see any other architecture other than this wall at Skene right here, which looks more like a property divide than a structure. We don't have any other evidence of structures beyond the Great Wall that was discovered here. So we have this large ring here of standing stone circles, but we don't find buildings, structures. So what's going on there? Why is this bit of the peninsula so rich in architecture, but the rest of the peninsula is not? What is it about this part of the Ness that makes it valuable? And this we can draw another similarity to Stonehenge. When you look at Stonehenge, we have the stones here with the hinge around it. And they've been doing all sorts of work all around Stonehenge, partly because of its popularity, but also super interesting. And again, around Stonehenge, they found some more hinges. Here's wood hinge, made out of wood, but the post holes survive. There's a cemetery here and some tombs. And Mike Parker Pearson, who's the excavator at Durrington Walls, and really the chief excavator in this region, he has come up with a theory that what Stonehenge might be representing is the space between the living and the dead. That you have the living over here, some sort of ceremony or passageway when people die, and then you have the cemeteries over here. And maybe we're seeing this use of landscape from the land of the living to the land of the dead. And how does that relate to Orkney? Well, we have the chamber tombs over here, and we have nothing over here. Maybe this is some sort of similar use of the landscape, where there's different meaning up here passing through. Maybe there's some sort of ritual practice here. And then to the land of the dead, and Bays Hal and the tombs down there. I don't know. The amount of evidence to support that is very small, but it is interesting to see how these landscapes do mirror each other. Stonehenge is in this open space, a lot going on around it. We're seeing the same at the Ness of Brodgar. Okay, so this was the last season of excavation, and there we are. Anyway, so that will, I guess I'll be done here, and I'll be glad to take some questions if I have time. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And yeah, I got some microphones here. If anybody here at OAS has any questions, over here.
Please. Wonderful presentation. Thank you so much. My first question, one of many. You mentioned that the stones were mostly glacial till, except for some extrusive igneous. Could you talk a little bit about the geology?
I'm sorry, yeah, it wasn't. So the underlying at the Ness, the underlying material is the glacial till. But the island, most of Orkney is built of these flat stones. Not the whole island, but most of it, about 90%. So this local stone that you can see in the walls here, they're quarries just off the site. Quarries. Yeah, we think so. It's submerged today. It's a project of my dreams is to get a submersible drone to map it out.
Is it sandstone, limestone?
Sandstone. Yeah.
And one more question. One more question. The lithic technology, was there much evidence of that? Toolkits, was it flake stone, ground stone?
Oh, I didn't even, yeah, thanks for asking. I didn't even mention the stone tools. We are finding stone tools. A little bit of pitch, which is like obsidian, but not quite obsidian. Mostly flint or chert. The question is, how did the chert get there? We don't have a lot of chert resources on the island. It's sandstone, so chert usually precipitates out in limestones. But we think it probably came in as wash on the coastline. The coast is full of pebbles, and you can go on the walk. You could take a walk on the coastline today and pick up, good cobble size cherts. Yeah, so it's probably a mile or two away they can get chert.
And then there's flint further south.
Yeah, and they're flints. So the question is really about trade and connection. And what we're seeing is the grooved ware that was developed here at the Ness and first seen at the Ness. It spread rapidly to the south. Now, did the actual material spread or the technology spread? It's probably the technology. There is someone working on that as their dissertation thesis. We don't think it's the material that moved, but the idea that moved. But does that mean there's certainly contact with the mainland, Scotland and England? Is there exchange coming up? Maybe some. We do see some with perhaps the finer materials. We found some nice. So GNEISS, the metamorphic rock, that is polished. So they're like ceremonial tools that were never used as a tool, but they're polished. And those are such fine stones, they were probably brought up from Lewis and some other areas. So there had to be some exchange between the South. But yeah, and the stones are probably the key to find that out.
Right, we got a number of questions out here, and if you have any questions on Zoom, let me know. Just type it in the chat and I'll read it out loud.
You actually kind of talked about this, so you haven't had a chance to explore the locks or see if there's anything connected to it?
There's been a little bit of work. There have been a couple of surveys done with, try to do some bathymetry work with sonar, but the water shows, the water is very shallow, close to the shoreline, that the sonar could not get there. So I had a student who was interested in that, and she was a gung-ho type of student. So we got her a wetsuit, and she did some line surveys. But the water, it's cloudy, and it was just too hard to see inside. So I really want to get a submersible and see what it can show us.
Hi, I was wondering about the Boy of Brodgar, the clay figure that was found. Wonder if you could talk about that a little bit and its context of discovery. Was it hidden in a wall or how was it preserved?
No, I'm trying. He was found in structure 1. And for those of you who don't know, this is a little figurine about yay big that was found in 2 parts. And it resembles a boy, a young person, probably a boy. It's really the only anthropomorphic thing we have found, and makes us question if it's really anthropomorphic, and it might just be similar to a boy. That's I think that's as far as my interpretation of it. We have spatula that have somewhat of a similar appearance, so maybe it's a design spatula, but he is a little thicker than that. So, yeah.
Have you found any evidence of farming or pasture land on the Ness, or do you think that was coming in from off the peninsula?
So what I can't talk about wheat grass production, but I can talk about cattle. Okay, so they had cattle. We were always looking for evidence of the oryx, but we couldn't find any, never came up. But one thing, and I should have mentioned it, in structure 10. So structure 10, it's the one in the back here. This was that large final structure in the big trench P. Around that structure was intentionally destroyed. We have evidence that it was intentionally burnt and destroyed. And right before it was burnt and destroyed, it appears that they had a major feast, and they feasted on cattle. So all surrounding the building are cattle bones, particularly long bones, so the legs. So they were butchered and had a feast. How did I forget mentioning this? I don't know, but had a feast, put the bones around the building, destroyed the building, and walked away. And nothing else came up after that. So what was happening, right? And I used to be able to use this metaphor in my classes, but I can't anymore because they don't relate. For those of you who saw Game of Thrones, right? There were the old gods and the new gods, and there was a battle between the old gods and the new gods. Well, at the end of the Neolithic, they're bringing in bronze, different way of living, different, right? Maybe a different cosmology, and maybe the old gods just died out. Maybe this was that transition to the Bronze Age, right? And they said, okay, we're done here. We live differently now. And they moved on.
Okay, as a non-archaeologist, this might be a naive question, but I was just wondering, because you mentioned these stones that are, used in the walls were sort of from local quarries. But then you had those big stones, the henges, and I know like in Stonehenge, I think I know, that they brought those from far away because they weren't local to the area. Were the big henges that are used here from the same quarries or coming from further away?
Great question. So the hinge stones in Orkney are local. There's been a recent project where they've been trying to source them. We know a couple of the quarries that they've been sourced from. One quarry is owned by a persnickety young older fella, and he won't let us on site. But we know of some areas that they come from a couple miles away. One's about 10 miles away. Different from Stonehenge, which was later by about 500 years. Those stones, some come from Wales. The blue stones come from Wales, and there's suggestions that they actually were used in a henge site, a standing stone circle site, prior to being transferred to Stonehenge. Then they have another stone called a sarsen stone. The sarsen stones are local. They're found in the fields. They're glacial deposits. And then just 2 years ago, they did a study on a stone called the altar stone, which is different from the sarsen stone and the blue stone. And it actually comes from northern Scotland. And where we're uncertain, everyone originally went, oh, it has to be Orkney, but it doesn't look like it's Orkney. It looks like it's further south. And I haven't followed there's bitter debate about that stone. So I haven't followed the last year or so, but we'll see.
Yeah, it just seems so strange that it's like at the very, almost the northernmost point, and then do you think that has some significance, or does that play into why this site was selected? The island, it's,
It's at the tip of Scotland, right? It's at the tip of the British Isles. These folks were seafaring. They had boats. They knew how to at least have rafts. And so they could be in water. So it could be people coming up the East Coast, people coming up the West Coast. That was where they met. It's where the North Atlantic and the North Sea meet. Very fierce water there. It's some really intense currents. That to me makes sense in my 21st century thinking. But there may be other things, other purposes. Yeah.
Got some wonderful comments on Zoom, just fascinating, wonderful presentation. Thank you. Got some questions here.
This might be a silly question, but which direction is the peninsula pointing?
That is a great, it's not east-west, it's like northeast, southwest. No. Northwest, southeast, southeast, sorry. Like this.
You indicated that some of the infrastructures that are laying it, are those sitting on bedrock or natural? Do you think there might be more that you just haven't gotten into that maybe earlier?
It's this glacial moraine tilly stuff. It's a mix. I had another student who was doing his senior project, and basically what I had him do, I gave him an auger and said, have fun. And so for 5 weeks, poor Aiden was augering down systematically, to try to get a shape of this landscape. Because my theory is that this was a high ground. They started building there because it probably had better drainage. And could be seen from around. And then over time, as buildings started collapsing or they started building new buildings, the lower points got filled in with the debris. So it wasn't completely flat, it was undular. And much like a tell site in the Middle East, it started building up as a hill. So the hill we see today is an artificial hill built from cultural material from 2,000 years of activity. So I had Aiden trying to demonstrate whether that was true or not. And what he did show is that going down from fill to the soil undulates. The thicknesses are different.
So the standing stone circles that you have mentioned, is there enough of those remaining for you to determine whether they're astronomically aligned or not?
Yes. And I'm trying to remember the answer for the. So Maze Howe, which is the chamber tomb, is aligned with the winter solstice. And you can go online and watch how the sun lights the back of the chamber tomb through its opening. The only issue with that is this is Orkney and it's cloudy most of the time. So sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. There is an alignment with the ring of Brodgar, but quite honestly, I can't remember what it is. So, but the stones is Ness. I don't know. I don't think so. But yeah. Which makes sense, especially if they're farmers. They need to know the seasons, when to plant seeds and whatnot.
I was wondering if you could talk more about the organics that you found at the site.
Okay. So, in every structure, we're doing 100% sampling and flotation when we get down to floor level. So tons, literally tons and tons and tons of sampling. Woo. So we are recovering the seeds. We are recovering charcoal, and we have people analyzing it. I'm not one of them, and that's actually what we're doing now. We are seeing windblown materials, I know, but a lot of grasses, some evidence of pollen from trees. Elms and oaks, I believe is what they said, but I'm probably saying that prematurely. But that's some of the specialist work that's ongoing now.
The site open to visitors? Did the farmer, he's lost quite a bit of his land, looks like, does he get paid for any of the loss?
Great story here. No, that the landowners were absolutely phenomenal. They let the land go to the site. We would get 20,000 visitors a year while we were excavating. We opened it to the public, made sure it was a public archaeology site. And you can see you actually see some of the public right here. And they were not active farmers. They had a beautiful, beautiful home. This was a field that they grew grass on, and usually let sheep roam on it, but they were not active farmers, and they never charged a fee to the excavation, which was really, really nice. But it just so happens that in the middle of the excavation, they decided that they wanted to move to be closer with their children, and they sold the house and the land to the site director, Nick Card, who I've mentioned a couple times, the site director. So Nick lives on site, so he can never leave work, ever. But you asked if the site can be visited. It's all backfilled now. And I saw it this last winter for the first time backfilled, and yeah, it was an emotional moment. But it's backfilled to protect it. One of the issues is these rocks start to flake off in the sunlight. And the best way to preserve them is to rebury them. So that is what we've done.
Right, I'm not seeing any questions on chat. It looks like this is the last one for the night.
So you mentioned the painted stones were very specifically chosen. I was wondering if you had done any sort of analysis of where they're placed or what sorts of.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. That and the carved stones, ones with the lozenges. There's a pattern that appears in a lot of the stones that looks sort of like an infinity sign, which we call the Brodgar butterfly, because we see that a lot. Antonia Thomas did her PhD dissertation on the art, and again I put that in quotes, on the art at the Ness, looking at both the carvings and the paintings. And her work isn't seeing a pattern that we can decipher. Now, a lot of the buildings, the stones were used and then reused, so robbed, which is the term that's used, but, the stones are used and then reused, so placed as second fitting. We missed a lot of stones, especially the first half of the excavation, before the excavators knew to look really, really carefully at each stone, so we probably lost some. Well, we know we lost some because you can go to the spoils pile and actually find stones with carvings on them. Context is lost, unfortunately, for those stones. Yeah, some of the art is real subtle, and you have to get the light just right to be able to see it. But we don't see a pattern. And no, it's like not an entire wall, it's just a few stones in and out. Yeah, don't know.
Dying to hear more examples of interior painting.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah. But it looks like that's it for questions for tonight. Thank you, Dr.
All right,
Pike,
thank
for talking tonight. Thank you, everybody, for being here at UMFI and attending online over Zoom. And don't forget, we have another talk next month, right here at OMSI, Dr. Patrick Rennie, Montana Department of Natural Resources and Conservation, on the use of drones for mapping stone features and quarries in Montana. So I hope to see you then in October. Till then, have a great night. Grab some refreshments on your way out. Thanks so much.
sure, I'll be at that one. If I'm in town, I'll be at that one.